The transport shuttle doors hissed open, and Danny Reed stepped onto the polished metal floor of Station Odin. Behind him walked something that made every alien in the arrival bay freeze in place. Bruno padded forward on all fours, his brown fur rippling over 800 pounds of pure muscle. The grizzly bear's eyes scanned the crowd with an intelligence that made some of the smaller species take several steps back. Danny carried a simple duffel bag over his shoulder. His uniform was crisp and new, marking him as a fresh cadet. He looked young, maybe 20 standard years, with dark hair and steady brown eyes that had seen their share of Earth's wilderness. Bruno stayed at his left side, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. "Is that a predator?" someone whispered in the crowd. "Did that human bring his own attack beast? What kind of species allows this?" Danny ignored the whispers. He had expected them. Humans were still new to the galactic community, only 2 years since first contact. Most aliens had never seen a bear before, let alone one walking beside a person like an old friend. The Academy registration desk sat at the far end of the bay. Danny walked toward it with calm confidence. Bruno's claws clicked softly on the metal floor. Aliens parted before them like water around a stone. Some looked curious, others looked afraid, and a few looked disgusted. Behind the desk sat a Chitauri, an insectoid species with compound eyes and 4 arms. She looked up from her data pad and her mandibles clicked nervously. "Name and species for registration," she said in accented standard. "Danny Reed, human, Earth registration number 7742. "And she gestured at Bruno with one delicate claw. "Bruno, registered combat companion. All documentation was submitted 3 months ago." The Chitauri tapped at her pad with 2 hands while the other 2 sorted through physical files. Her antennae twitched with what might have been stress. "Yes, I see it here. Approved by Human Military Command and cleared by Academy standards. You are assigned to Barracks Section 12, Room 48. She paused. "There have been complaints already." "We just arrived," Danny said quietly. "Complaints in advance," the Chitauri explained. "Several cadets from prominent families requested you be housed elsewhere. The Academy denied those requests. All cadets are treated equally here." "Thank you." Danny took his room assignment chip and turned to leave. That was when he first saw Captain Torvin. The Saurix officer stood near the training wing entrance, his reptilian features twisted into something between amusement and contempt. He was tall for his species, nearly 7 feet, with dark green scales and yellow eyes that tracked Danny's movement. "Extraordinary," Torvin said loudly enough for half the bay to hear. "The humans send us children and pets. What next? Will they enroll their livestock?" Several nearby cadets laughed. Torvin's reputation was well known. He came from Saurix nobility and had graduated at the top of his class 5 years earlier. Now he served as a junior instructor, training new recruits while waiting for his deep space assignment. Danny kept walking. Bruno's ears flicked toward Torvin, but the bear maintained his calm pace. "I am speaking to you, human," Torvin called out. Danny stopped and turned. His expression stayed neutral and polite. "Yes, sir." "That creature, explain why you brought it to a military academy." "Bruno is my registered combat companion, sir. All proper forms were filed and approved." Torvin's laugh was sharp and mocking. "Combat companion? What combat could a primitive animal possibly assist with? Does it operate weapons, pilot ships, or does it simply growl at enemies and hope they surrender?" More laughter from the crowd. A few alien cadets recorded the interaction on their personal devices. Bruno sat down next to Danny, completely still except for his eyes, which never left Torvin's face. "Bruno has completed the same preliminary trials I have, sir. His performance scores are in our file." "Performance scores for an animal," Torvin shook his head. "Tell me, human, did your species bribe the Academy Committee? Is that how you gained entrance? Because I reviewed the entry requirements, and I simply cannot understand how your kind qualified." The bay went quiet. That was a serious accusation. The Galactic Defense Academy accepted less than 2% of all applicants. Suggesting someone had cheated their way in was an insult to every cadet present. Danny took a slow breath. We qualified through the standard testing process, sir, same as everyone else here. Impossible, Torvin waved a clawed hand dismissively. Your species still uses chemical propulsion for half your spacecraft. You have barely left your own. Star System, you bring animals to military training. No, there must be some political reason you were accepted. Perhaps the council felt sorry for you. Bruno's lips pulled back slightly, showing just the edge of his teeth. It was not quite a snarl, but it was close. Danny placed one hand on Bruno's shoulder without looking down. If you have concerns about our admission, sir, perhaps you should address them with the Academy commander. Perhaps I will, Torvin said. Until then, try not to let your pet damage anything important. I would hate for Earth to be charged for repairs. He turned and walked away, his tail swishing behind him. The other cadets slowly dispersed, some still laughing, others looking uncomfortable with what they had witnessed. Danny found his assigned quarters an hour later. The room was small but functional, with 2 sleeping platforms, a shared cleaning station, and storage lockers. His roommate had not arrived yet. Danny unpacked his few belongings while Bruno explored every corner of the room with his nose. First day always goes well, Danny said quietly to his friend. Bruno huffed and settled onto the floor near Danny's bunk. The bear was too large for any furniture designed for humanoids. Outside their window, the massive training facilities stretched across the station. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species prepared for careers defending the galaxy. And somewhere in those halls, Torvin was already planning how to make the next few months as difficult as possible for the human and his unusual companion. Danny lay back on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. He had known this would not be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever was. Dawn cycle began at Station Odin with a soft chime instead of harsh alarms. Danny was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor next to Bruno. They had developed this routine years ago back on Earth. 20 minutes of quiet time together before the chaos of the day began. Bruno rested his massive head on Danny's knee while Danny scratched behind the bear's ears. Ready for whatever they throw at us today? Danny asked softly. Bruno's answering rumble was gentle, almost a purr. It was a sound most people never heard from grizzly bears, a sound reserved for family. The training hall filled quickly after morning meal. Dozens of cadets gathered in their assigned groups, chattering in various languages and communication methods. The Veilborn floated as clouds of sentient gas inside containment suits. The granite people lumbered on their stone legs. The lumens sparkled with internal light, and everywhere eyes turned toward Danny and Bruno. Torvin entered last, his green scales catching the overhead lights. He carried a data pad and wore the expression of someone who had planned something unpleasant. Attention, his voice cut through the conversations. Today we begin equipment familiarization. Each cadet will be issued standard defensive gear and required to demonstrate proper usage within safety parameters. He began calling names, assigning cadets to different stations. The task seemed reasonable and appropriate for each species' physiology. Then he reached Danny's name. Read, Danny. Report to Waste Reclamation Systems. You will be cleaning and cataloging all biofilter components in Section 7. Silence fell across the hall. Waste reclamation was necessary work, but it was not training. It was janitorial duty. Several cadets looked uncomfortable. One Chitauri cadet, a young female Danny had noticed earlier, clicked her mandibles in what might have been disapproval. Sir, is that a training exercise? Danny asked calmly. It is the task I have assigned you, Torvin replied. Do you have a problem following orders, cadet? No, sir. Good, and leave your pet here. Animals are not permitted in sanitation areas. Bruno goes where I go, sir. It is in my contract with the Academy. Torvin's eyes narrowed. Very well, perhaps the smell will encourage you both to complete your work quickly. Danny and Bruno made their way to Section 7. The other cadets dispersed to their assignments, most receiving hands-on training with energy shields, communications equipment, or tactical sensors. Danny got a mop and a bucket. The biofilter room smelled exactly as bad as expected. Danny worked methodically, cleaning each component and logging its condition. Bruno lay near the door, watching with patient eyes. They had been through worse together. 3 hours later, Danny finished. Every filter was clean and properly documented. He returned to the training hall to find the other cadets taking a break. Torvin looked surprised to see him back so soon. Completed already? Torvin examined the data Danny submitted. His expression soured when he found no errors. Yes, sir. Well then, since you have so much energy, report to cargo bay. 5, there are supply crates that need to be moved and organized. Manual labor. The anti-gravity lifts are under maintenance. It was another punishment disguised as an assignment. Danny simply nodded and left. Bruno followed, his claws clicking steadily on the metal floor. By midday meal, Danny had moved 2 tons of supplies by hand while other cadets practiced with advanced weapons systems. His muscles ached, but he refused to show it. Bruno had helped where he could, using his strength to push the heavier crates while Danny guided them into place. They sat together in a quiet corner of the meal hall. Danny ate his rations slowly while Bruno worked on the specialized food pack designed for Earth carnivores. Several cadets approached their table. The young Chitauri female was among them. That was not right, she said without introduction. Her standard was clearer than most. What Torvin did today, everyone knows it. I am Trill, she continued. Navigation Specialist Track, these are my friends. She gestured to a Lumen whose body glowed soft blue, and a Veilborn whose containment suit had been decorated with small painted stars. Brightness, the Lumen's voice chimed like crystal. Engineering. Call me Drift, the Veilborn's voice came through speakers on the suit. Communications. Danny, he replied, and this is Bruno. Is he really trained for combat? Trill's antennae leaned forward with curiosity. Yes, we have worked together since he was a cub. How is that possible? Brightness asked. My species studied Earth biology. Bears are apex predators. They do not form cooperative bonds with other species. Usually they do not, Danny agreed. But Earth is complicated. Humans learned to bond with many predator species over thousands of years. Wolves became dogs, hawks became hunting partners. Sometimes, very rarely, bears become friends. You found him? Drift asked. His mother was killed by poachers. He was maybe 3 months old. I was hiking in the mountains and heard him crying. I knew if I left him, he would die, so I took him home. And your authorities allowed this? Trill seemed shocked. Not at first. There were many arguments and much paperwork. But my family has military history. We proposed a trial program. If Bruno could pass military training standards, he could serve alongside human soldiers. He passed everything they gave him. Bruno lifted his head at the sound. Of his name, his dark eyes regarded the alien cadets with calm interest. None of them seemed afraid, just deeply curious. What Torvin said yesterday, Brightness's light dimmed slightly. About bribes and political favors, that was wrong. It is what he believes, Danny said simply. But you proved yourself today, Trill insisted. You completed every task he gave you, no matter how unfair. That takes strength. It takes stubbornness, Danny smiled. Different thing. The conversation continued through the meal. Other cadets began to listen, forming a wider circle. They asked questions about Earth, about human history, about the bond between species. Danny answered honestly, never boasting, simply explaining. Torvin watched from across the hall. His expression grew darker with each passing minute. That afternoon brought physical training. All cadets gathered in the gymnasium for endurance testing. Torvin personally oversaw the exercises. He seemed to take particular pleasure in designing Danny's course. Reed, you will complete the obstacle course designed for granite people. Since you brought a beast of burden with you, perhaps you are as strong as living stone. The granite obstacle course was brutal. It involved lifting massive weights, climbing walls designed for species twice Danny's size, and navigating gaps meant for bodies with different proportions. It was meant to be impossible for a human. Danny studied the course for 30 seconds, then he looked at Bruno. "Together," he asked quietly. Bruno stood and moved to the starting line. What happened next would be talked about in the academy for years. Danny did not try to match Granite's strength. Instead, he used Bruno's mass and power as a counterweight. Where Danny could not lift, Bruno pushed. Where Danny could not reach, Bruno provided a platform. They moved through the course like water, finding the path of least resistance. It was not pretty, it was not standard, but 17 minutes later they crossed the finish line. The Granite Cadet record was 19 minutes. Torvin stared at the timer display as if it had personally betrayed him. "Acceptable," he finally said through clenched teeth. "Barely." But the other cadets saw the truth. They had witnessed something remarkable, not a human and a pet, something else entirely. The holographic combat chambers occupied an entire deck of Station Odin. Each room could generate any environment imaginable, from asteroid fields to urban warfare zones. The technology came from the Lumens, who had perfected light manipulation over thousands of years. Inside these chambers, cadets faced scenarios as close to real combat as possible without actual death. Danny stood in the staging area with 40 other cadets. They had been divided into 8 squads of 5, each assigned a different objective in the same shared environment. The scenario briefing played on every cadet's heads-up display. "Hostile forces have captured a civilian transport vessel," the narrator's voice explained in flat standard. "Multiple hostages are held in different sections of the ship. Your squad must infiltrate, neutralize threats, and extract civilians with minimal casualties. Time limit, 30 minutes. Failure parameters include hostage death, squad elimination, or objective abandonment." Torvin moved through the staging area, personally assigning squad positions. When he reached Danny, his smile was cold. "Reed, you and your animal will function as Squad 7. No additional members." Trill's antennae shot up in alarm. "Sir, all other squads have 5 members. That is not balanced." "Squad 7 requested special consideration due to their unique partnership," Torvin lied smoothly. "I am simply honoring that request, unless Reed believes he cannot handle the assignment." Danny met Torvin's eyes. "We will manage, sir." "Excellent. Squad 7 will take the aft cargo section. It has the highest concentration of hostiles and the most complex layout. Good luck." The other squads received more favorable positions with clearer approach routes. Danny did not argue. He simply checked Bruno's equipment harness, making sure the communication device was secure and the tactical camera was functioning. Bruno wore no weapons, but the harness had sensors that fed information to Danny's display. The simulation began with a flash of light. Suddenly, Danny and Bruno stood in a narrow metal corridor. Emergency lights flickered red. The ship's layout appeared on Danny's visor, showing hostage locations and suspected enemy positions. 43 hostiles estimated in their sector. 12 hostages. "Okay, boy," Danny whispered. "Let us do this quiet." Bruno's nose went to work immediately. The holographic environment replicated sense as well as sights. To Bruno's enhanced senses, the difference between real and simulated enemies was meaningless. He could track movement through walls based on air currents and artificial pheromones the system generated. They moved deeper into the cargo section. Most squads would assault directly, using weapons and shields to overwhelm enemy positions. Danny chose a different path. He followed Bruno's lead, letting the bear's senses guide them through maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts that did not appear on standard maps. The first hostage group was guarded by 6 holographic enemies. Danny waited above them in a ceiling access point while Bruno circled around through a cargo container maze. On Danny's signal, Bruno created a distraction, knocking over a container with a tremendous crash. When the guards turned to investigate, Danny dropped behind them and used a stun weapon to neutralize all 6 in rapid succession. "Hostages secure, moving to extraction point," Danny reported over squad communications. In the main control room, instructors watched every squad's progress on massive displays. Torvin stood with his arms crossed, waiting for Squad 7 to fail. But the other instructors leaned forward with interest. "He is not engaging directly," one observed, "using the animal's sensory advantages to avoid confrontation entirely." "Look at the coordination," another pointed. "No verbal commands, they communicate through body language and predetermined signals." Squad 7 cleared 2 more hostage groups using similar tactics. Bruno's ability to detect enemies through walls meant Danny always knew exactly where threats were positioned. They moved like smoke, appearing and disappearing before enemies could mount effective resistance. Other squads encountered heavy resistance. Squad 3 lost 2 members to simulated fire. Squad 5 failed their objective entirely when a hostage was killed in crossfire. But Squad 7 continued their methodical advance. The final hostage group was the hardest. 8 guards in a central room with no cover and multiple entrance points. Any direct assault would result in hostage casualties. Danny studied the situation for 90 seconds while Bruno remained perfectly still beside him. Then Danny noticed something. The holographic projectors had a slight delay when rendering rapid movement. It was barely noticeable, maybe 0.2 seconds, but it was enough. Bruno full speed run in 20 seconds, pattern delta. Bruno's muscles tensed. Pattern delta was something they had practiced thousands of times. A charging grizzly bear moved fast, terrifyingly fast, and when Bruno charged at full speed through holographic enemies, the system struggled to render their response quickly enough. Danny followed in Bruno's wake, using that 0.2-second delay to target guards before they could fire. It worked. The final hostage group was freed with 0 casualties. Squad 7 completed their objective with 4 minutes remaining and no squad losses. The simulation ended. All cadets returned to the staging area. Most looked exhausted. Several had taken simulated wounds that left them shaken. Danny and Bruno appeared calm and collected, as if they had simply been on a walk. Torvin's expression was venomous. He pulled up the performance data, searching for any rule violation or technicality. He found none. Every action Squad 7 took was within parameters. The only difference was method. "Explain your tactics, Reed," Torvin demanded loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You did not follow standard assault protocols." "Standard protocols did not account for our abilities, sir. We used the advantages available to us." "You exploited system lag," Torvin accused. "I noticed a pattern and adapted to it, sir. Is that not what soldiers are trained to do?" The lead instructor stepped forward. Commander Aldris was a wayfarer, a species known for wisdom and fairness. Her silvery skin reflected the overhead lights, and her 4 eyes studied Danny with interest. "Cadet Reed is correct," Aldris said quietly. "Adaptability is the mark of a skilled soldier. Squad 7 achieved their objective with the highest efficiency rating of any squad today. This should be commended, not questioned." Torvin's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. As cadets dispersed, several approached Danny with new respect. Trill walked alongside him toward the exit. "That was amazing," she said. "I have never seen anyone move through a simulation that way." "Bruno did most of the work," Danny replied honestly. "No," Brightness chimed in, having overheard. "You worked together. That is different than one doing more than the other. It was partnership." "How did you train him to be so precise?" Drift asked. "My species studied command hierarchies extensively. What you two do does not fit any known model." Danny stopped walking. Bruno sat next to him, patient and calm despite the attention. "I did not train Bruno to obey me," Danny said carefully. "I taught him to trust me, and he taught me to trust him. Everything we do is conversation, not command. He chooses to work with me because we are family. That is why it works." "Your species forms families with predators," Trill's antennae expressed confusion. My species forms families with anyone willing to love us back, Danny said simply. It is our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. Torvin watched this conversation from across the room. His hands were clenched into fists. Every day these humans remained at the academy, his authority eroded further. Something had to be done. 2 weeks passed, and Danny's reputation grew despite Torvin's efforts to undermine him. Every impossible task assigned came back completed. Every unfair evaluation was challenged and overturned by other instructors who reviewed the actual performance data. Word spread through the academy about the human and his bear who worked as one mind in 2 bodies. The evening rest periods became teaching time. Danny's quarters turned into an informal gathering space where cadets from different species came to talk. They asked endless questions about Earth, about human history, about the strange relationship between humans and other animals. "Explain again how this happened," Trill said one night. She sat on the floor near Bruno, her chitinous body folded in a position that looked uncomfortable to human eyes but was natural for her. "How did predators become friends?" Danny leaned against his bunk. "It took thousands of years. Humans were not always the dominant species on Earth. We were prey for many large predators. We were weak compared to bears, tigers, wolves. Our only advantage was our brain and our ability to cooperate. So you formed packs." Drift's gaseous form swirled inside the containment suit. "Like my species does with our cloud collectives." "Similar but different. We formed packs with other species. We found wolf cubs and raised them. Over generations they changed. They became dogs. They hunted with us, protected our children, shared our homes. The relationship made both species stronger." "But bears are different," Brightness pulsed with curiosity. "Dogs evolved alongside humans, bears did not." "No, they did not. Bruno is still wild in his heart. I did not change what he is. I just gave him a choice about who to trust." Bruno rumbled softly at his name. Several cadets had learned this was his contentment sound. Trill carefully extended one delicate claw and touched the fur on Bruno's shoulder. The bear remained still, allowing the contact. "He lets us near him because you trust us," Trill said with wonder. "He reads your emotions and mirrors them." "That is part of it," Danny agreed. "But he also makes his own judgments. If he thought any of you were a threat, I could not stop him from reacting. I do not control him. We choose each other every day." These conversations happened often now. The alien cadets were beginning to understand something fundamental about humanity. It was not technology or strength that made humans unique. It was their capacity to form bonds across impossible divides. Torvin heard about these gatherings. His anger festered. In his culture, strength was measured in individual achievement and family lineage. The idea of bonding with lesser species was not just strange, it was offensive. And worse, his cadets were starting to question his teachings. The confrontation came during a tactical briefing 3 days later. All cadets gathered in the main lecture hall to review defensive formations. Torvin stood at the front, displaying various battle scenarios on the holographic projector. He was in the middle of explaining a complex flanking maneuver when Danny raised his hand. "Sir, that formation leaves the center weak. If the enemy recognizes the pattern, they could break through easily." The room went quiet. Cadets did not usually question instructors during briefings. Torvin's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting the standard Sorex military formation is flawed, Cadet?" "I am suggesting it might not work against all enemies, sir. Different species think differently. What looks like weakness to one might look like opportunity to another." "And I suppose humans have superior tactics?" Torvin's voice dripped with sarcasm. "No, sir. But human history includes fighting other humans for thousands of years. We learn to expect the unexpected." "How primitive," Torvin said coldly. "Your species was still killing each other when mine had already achieved interstellar travel. Perhaps that is why you bring animals to military academies. You have not evolved past your barbaric roots." Several cadets shifted uncomfortably. This was crossing a line. brightness dimmed with concern. Trill's antennae flattened against her. Head. Danny remained calm. Our history is violent, sir. We do not deny that, but we learned from it. We learned that different perspectives make us stronger. That is why Bruno and I work together. Different species, different strengths, one purpose. One purpose, Torvin repeated mockingly. What purpose could an animal possibly understand? Does it comprehend military strategy? Does it understand sacrifice and duty? Or does it simply follow you because you feed it? Bruno's head lifted. His ears focused on Torvin. The bear's posture shifted slightly, becoming more alert. Bruno understands plenty, sir, Danny said quietly. He understands loyalty. He understands trust. He understands when someone is speaking with respect and when someone is just being cruel. Cruel? Torvin's voice rose. I am being realistic. You are a political token, Reed. Your species was accepted into the academy not because you earned it, but because the council wanted to appear inclusive. You are a charity case walking around with a pet, pretending to be a soldier. That is enough, Trill stood up suddenly. Sir, with respect, that is not appropriate. Sit down, Cadet, Torvin snapped, or you will join Reed in remedial training. I do not mind remedial training if it means speaking truth, Trill said firmly. Danny has outperformed half the cadets in this room. His scores are documented. This is not about ability. This is about prejudice. Torvin's face flushed darker green. He took 3 steps toward Trill, his claws extending slightly. It was a threat display. In Saurek's culture, extending claws meant violence was coming. You dare accuse me of prejudice? Torvin's voice was dangerous now. You forget yourself, Cadet. Danny moved between Torvin and Trill without thinking. It was pure instinct. Protect the friend. Sir, she meant no disrespect, Danny said. This is between you and me. Leave her out of it. Between you and me? Torvin's laugh was ugly. You are nothing, human. You are a primitive from a backwards world who brings animals to play soldier. You do not belong here. Your species does not belong in the galactic community. You are children playing with technology you barely understand. Torvin stepped forward again, pointing one clawed finger directly at Danny's chest. The claw touched the fabric of Danny's uniform. It was an aggressive gesture in any species' language, a physical threat. That was when Bruno rose to his full height. Standing on his hind legs, the grizzly bear towered over every being in the room. 8 feet of muscle and fur and ancient predator instinct. His lips pulled back, showing teeth that could crush bone, and from deep in his chest came a sound that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The growl was not loud. It did not need to be. It was a frequency that triggered something primal in every species present, every prey instinct, every survival mechanism coded into DNA over millions of years of evolution. It said one simple thing: death is here. Torvin stumbled backward. His threat display vanished instantly, replaced with genuine fear. His claws retracted. His pupils dilated. Every cadet in the room froze. Bruno's eyes locked on Torvin. The growl continued, low and steady and utterly terrifying. The bear took 1 step forward, then another. Bruno, Danny's voice cut through the tension. Stand down. The growl stopped, but Bruno did not move. His eyes remained fixed on Torvin. He is not worth it, boy, Danny said quietly. He is just scared. For 10 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The entire room waited to see what would happen next. Then Bruno dropped back to all fours. He moved to Danny's side and sat down. His posture relaxed, but his eyes never left Torvin's face. The doors at the back of the hall opened. Commander Aldris entered with 2 other senior instructors. Someone had alerted them to the confrontation. Commander Aldris surveyed the frozen tableau before her. Torvin pressed against the far wall, his scales pale with fear. Bruno sitting calmly beside Danny, but radiating controlled power. 40 cadets scattered around the room in various states of shock. The tension was thick enough to cut. Someone explain what happened here, Aldris said calmly. Her 4 eyes moved from face to face, missing nothing. Nobody spoke at first, then Trill stepped forward. Commander, Instructor Torvin was conducting briefing when Danny questioned a tactical formation. The discussion became heated. Torvin made physical threat display toward Danny. Bruno responded to protect his partner. "Is this accurate?" Aldris looked at Torvin. The Saurix instructor seemed to be regaining his composure. "The animal threatened me, Commander. It should be removed from the Academy immediately. This proves humans cannot control their creatures." "Bruno did not threaten you," Danny said quietly. "He warned you there is a difference." "You are splitting hairs," Torvin snapped, some of his anger returning. "That beast showed aggression toward an instructor." "After you showed aggression toward a cadet," Brightness spoke up. The lumen's light pulsed with unusual intensity. "We all saw you extend your claws and touch Danny's uniform. In your own culture, that is a threat of violence." "I was making a point," Torvin protested. "You were being inappropriate," another voice joined. A granite cadet named Slate spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "For weeks you have targeted Reed and his companion. We have all witnessed it. Today you went too far." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Torvin looked around and seemed to realize that his authority had evaporated. These cadets were no longer on his side. Commander Aldris held up one hand for silence. "All cadets except Reed and Torvin are dismissed. Return to your quarters. Instructors, please remain." The room emptied quickly. Trill touched Danny's shoulder as she passed, a gesture of support. Within minutes, only Danny, Bruno, Torvin, and 3 senior instructors remained. "Sit," Aldris commanded. "Both of you." Danny sat on a nearby bench. Bruno lay at his feet. Torvin took a chair as far from the bear as possible. Aldris accessed a data pad and began pulling up files. "I have been reviewing performance records since this incident was reported. Reed, your scores are remarkable. Tactical analysis places you in the top 5% of all cadets currently enrolled. Physical performance is above average for your species and weight class. Simulation results show consistent excellence with unconventional problem solving." She looked at Torvin. "You have been giving Reed the lowest possible evaluations in all categories. Your written reports describe him as barely competent, yet every other instructor reports the opposite. Every objective measurement contradicts your assessments." "He does not follow proper protocols," Torvin said stiffly. "He relies on an animal instead of learning true military discipline." "He adapts to situations using available resources," Aldris corrected. "That is the definition of tactical thinking, and his companion is not a random animal. Bruno has his own performance file." She pulled up another display. "Bruno has completed every physical trial designed for combat support units. His sensory awareness exceeds standard military scanners in close quarters. His ability to work without verbal commands reduces communication vulnerabilities, and his presence has a documented psychological impact on opponents." "He is a wild predator," Torvin argued. "Wild predators cannot be trusted in military operations." "By that logic, we should not trust the Chitauri whose ancestors were hive parasites, or the Veilborn who can suffocate other species by entering their breathing apparatus, or my own people, the Wayfarers, who can manipulate emotional states through pheromones." Aldris fixed all 4 eyes on Torvin. "Every species in this academy has a predatory or dangerous history. We are not defined by what we were. We are defined by what we choose to be." She turned to Danny. "Tell me about your bond with Bruno. How did you meet?" Danny took a breath. "I found him in the mountains of North America. His mother had been killed by illegal hunters. He was 3 months old and would have died without help. My family took him in. We fed him, cared for him, gave him space to be what he is. As he grew, we realized he was special, not just intelligent, but wise in ways that are hard to explain." "You trained him?" "No, Commander, I lived with him. I learned his language and he learned mine. We taught each other. When Earth military began accepting animal companions into service, we volunteered together. It was his choice as much as mine." "How can an animal make such a choice?" Torvin challenged. "How do you know they cannot?" Danny replied. Your species has never tried to communicate with animals beyond simple commands. Humans spent thousands of years learning to listen. Bruno understands words, concepts, strategies. He may not speak standard, but he thinks and feels and decides. Aldris was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "What happened today from your perspective?" "Instructor Torvin has been hostile since I arrived. I accepted it as part of training. But today he threatened Trill for defending me. I stepped between them. He made a physical threat gesture. Bruno interpreted that as an attack and responded. I gave the command to stand down and Bruno obeyed immediately. No one was harmed." "And if you had not commanded him to stop?" Danny met her eyes honestly. "Bruno would have defended me. That is what family does, but I would never let it reach that point. We have been together 8 years, I know. His every movement, every thought, he knows mine. We trust each other absolutely." Aldris turned to Torvin. "You have allowed personal bias to affect your professional judgment. You have created a hostile environment for a cadet who has committed no infractions and performed exceptionally. This is unacceptable. Commander, I maintain that humans are not ready for this academy. They are too primitive, too unpredictable." "They are different," Aldris corrected firmly. "Different is not the same as inferior. The humans passed every entrance requirement. They earned their place here through merit. Your inability to accept this reflects poorly on you, not them." She stood, signaling the meeting was ending. "Torvin, you are removed from instructional duties pending a full review. Reed, you will report directly to me for the remainder of the term. Your performance will be evaluated fairly based on actual results, not prejudice." "Commander, this is outrageous," Torvin protested. "This is overdue," Aldris said coldly. "You are dismissed." Torvin left without another word, his tail dragging on the floor in defeat. Aldris looked down at Danny and Bruno. "I owe you an apology. This should have been addressed weeks ago. I knew Torvin had biases, but I believed he would set them aside for his duties. I was wrong." "You were trying to give him a chance to grow," Danny said. "That is honorable." "Perhaps, but it cost you dignity and peace. That is not acceptable." She paused. "May I ask you something personal?" "Yes, Commander." "What do humans call what you have with Bruno? What is the word for this bond?" Danny smiled and scratched behind Bruno's ears. The bear leaned into the touch with obvious contentment. "We call it friendship, Commander. The deepest kind. The kind where you would give everything for each other without hesitation. Where trust is absolute and judgment is suspended. Where two beings look at each other and see not human or bear, not same or different, but simply family." "Family," Aldris repeated softly. "Yes, I think our species could learn from that concept. We are very good at building alliances, but alliances are based on mutual benefit. Family is based on love. Perhaps that is humanity's true gift to the galaxy." "Perhaps," Danny agreed. "Or perhaps everyone has that gift and just needs permission to use it." Aldris smiled, which was rare for a wayfarer. "Get some rest, Cadet. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. And read." "Yes, Commander. Thank you for showing us what trust looks like." 3 months transformed everything. Under Commander Aldris's direct supervision, Danny flourished. His tactical scores climbed even higher. His simulation performance became case studies for teaching unconventional problem solving. And Bruno became something of a mascot for the Academy, proof that strength came in unexpected forms. The cadets who had once mocked or feared them now sought their company. Trill became Danny's closest friend, often studying together late into the night cycles. Brightness helped Bruno's harness equipment, designing better sensors and communication systems. Drift taught Danny the subtle art of reading alien body language across species. And Slate, the massive granite cadet, appointed himself their unofficial protector, though everyone knew Bruno needed no protection. Torvin left the academy 2 weeks after the confrontation. The official record stated he requested transfer to Deep Space Patrol. The unofficial truth was that he had been given a choice: resign with dignity or face formal charges of discrimination and abuse of authority. He chose resignation. Some cadets said he had learned nothing, that he still believed humans were inferior. Others said they saw him watching Danny's training sessions from observation decks, his expression unreadable. The truth probably lived somewhere in between. Growth was never a straight line. Now the final combat trials loomed. Every cadet would face the same challenge, a massive multi-squad simulation designed to test everything they had learned. The scenario was brutal and complex. A hostile force had captured a colony station. Multiple objectives had to be completed simultaneously: rescue civilians, disable the station's weapons, prevent reactor meltdown, and neutralize enemy leadership. Failure in any single objective meant total mission failure. 200 cadets divided into 40 squads, the largest coordinated exercise in Academy history. And for the first time, squad assignments would be chosen by the cadets themselves rather than instructors. It was a test of social cohesion as much as combat ability. Danny stood in the assembly hall watching squads form. Most cadets gravitated toward their own species or familiar training partners. Chitauri grouped with Chitauri, lumens with lumens. The granite people formed an imposing unit of living stone. Danny, Trill approached with her usual group. Brightness, Drift, and Slate followed. "We would be honored if you and Bruno joined our squad." Danny looked at the unlikely collection of beings before him. An insectoid, a being of light, a cloud of sentient gas, and a living mountain, plus one human and one bear. "You sure?" Danny asked. "Other squads might be more conventional." "We do not want conventional," Brightness chimed. "We want effective. Your tactics are unlike anything standard training teaches. That is exactly what we need." "Besides," Slate rumbled in his slow, deep voice, "we are already friends. Why pretend to be soldiers with strangers when we can be soldiers with family?" Bruno huffed approval. The choice was made. The simulation began at dawn cycle. 40 squads dropped into a virtual environment so detailed it was indistinguishable from reality. The station sprawled across multiple levels, filled with civilian population areas, industrial zones, and military installations. Enemy forces numbered in the hundreds. Squad commanders received their assignments. Danny's squad was tasked with the reactor section, preventing meltdown while hostile forces tried to sabotage cooling systems. It was considered one of the hardest objectives because it required both combat skill and technical expertise. They materialized in a maintenance tunnel near the reactor core. Alarms wailed. The temperature was already climbing. According to the mission clock, they had 18 minutes before catastrophic failure. "Brightness, can you interface with the cooling systems?" Danny asked. "If I can reach the main control hub, yes, but it is 3 levels up and heavily guarded." "Slate, you and Drift create a distraction at the main entrance. Make them think that is our primary assault route." "And us?" Trill asked, indicating herself, Danny, and Bruno. "We go through the plasma conduits. Bruno can handle the heat better than most species, and his nose will find the fastest path. We get Brightness to the controls while everyone is looking the wrong way." It was a ridiculous plan. Plasma conduits were not meant for travel. They were narrow, super hot, and filled with radiation that would harm most species. But Earth bears had evolved to handle extreme environments, and Danny had learned to trust Bruno's instincts over logical planning. The plan worked, Slate and Drift. Attack the main entrance with overwhelming force, drawing enemy attention. Meanwhile, Danny, Trill, and Brightness followed Bruno through passages that did not appear on any station map. Bruno's sense of smell detected air currents that led to maintenance access points. His thick fur protected him from heat that would have burned others. They reached the control hub from above, dropping through ventilation shafts into a room filled with surprised enemies. The fight was quick and brutal. Trill's combat skills were exceptional at close range. Brightness released a blinding flash that stunned opponents, and Bruno's sheer physical presence scattered the rest. Brightness accessed the systems and stabilized the reactor with 2 minutes to spare on the countdown. But the simulation was not over. Multiple squads were still fighting across the station. Some were succeeding, others failing catastrophically. "This is Squad Commander Reed to all units," Danny broadcast on the general channel. "We have reactor secure, requesting status updates." Responses flooded back. Squad 12 was pinned down in the civilian sector. Squad 27 had lost half their members trying to reach the weapons array. Squad 6 needed backup to breach the enemy command center. "We can help," Trill said. "We completed our objective early." Danny made a decision. "All squads, this is Reed. Send your locations and status. Any squad that has completed their objective, converge on failing positions. We do this together or not at all." It was not standard protocol. Each squad was supposed to focus on their assigned objective and nothing else. But Danny was thinking like a human, like someone who understood that survival meant helping the whole tribe, not just your immediate family. Within 10 minutes, successful squads were reinforcing struggling ones. Slate and his granite teammates formed a mobile shield wall that allowed other squads to advance. Brightness used her light manipulation to blind entire groups of enemies. Drift infiltrated communication systems and fed false information to enemy commanders. And Bruno became a symbol. Every cadet who saw him remembered that strength came in unexpected forms. The bear who should not have been there, working beside the human who had been mocked, both proving that different did not mean lesser. The simulation ended with total victory, every objective completed. Casualty rates were the lowest in Academy history for exercises this complex, and the performance reports were extraordinary. Graduation came 2 weeks later. Danny stood with 200 other cadets in their formal uniforms. Bruno wore a special harness decorated with the Academy emblem. Commander Aldris addressed them all, her 4 eyes sweeping across species from a dozen worlds. "You are no longer cadets," she said. "You are officers of the Galactic Defense Force. You represent your worlds and your peoples, but more than that, you represent an idea. The idea that cooperation is stronger than competition. That diversity is a strength, not a weakness. That family can be chosen as well as born." She paused. "This graduating class has taught the Academy as much as we taught you. You showed us that our old ways of thinking have limits, that the best solutions come from unexpected places, and that the bonds between beings matter more than the species they belong to." Rankings were announced. Danny placed 3rd overall in his class, Trill was 5th, Brightness 7th. Their squad had the highest combined scores of any team in decades. As cadets filed out to receive their assignments, Torvin appeared at the edge of the crowd. He looked smaller somehow, less certain. He approached Danny slowly, his tail low in a gesture of submission. "I owe you an apology," Torvin said quietly. "A real one, not words forced by commanders." Danny studied him. "Go on." "I was wrong about you, about your species, about what strength means." Torvin looked at Bruno. "I spent my life believing that individual power was all that mattered, that hierarchy and dominance were the natural order. You showed me something different. You showed me that choosing to trust someone makes you stronger, not weaker." "What changed your mind?" Danny asked. "I watched the final combat trial. I saw what you did, coordinating all those squads, putting mission success above personal glory. In my culture, a warrior seeks individual honor. You sought collective survival, and it worked better than anything I was taught." He extended his hand, slowly, claws retracted. "I am sorry for the pain I caused. I hope someday you can forgive me." Danny took his hand. Bruno allowed Torvin to approach, which was perhaps the greatest sign of forgiveness possible. "We all make mistakes," Danny said. "What matters is learning from them." Torvin nodded and walked away. Whether he would truly change or simply go back to his old ways, only time would tell. But he had taken the first step. Danny received his assignment an hour later. Frontier Defense Fleet, Sector 7, assigned to rapid response teams. Bruno's name was listed right next to his as full combat partner with officer rank equivalent. They would be protecting colony worlds on the edge of explored space. Trill, Brightness, Drift, and Slate all received assignments to the same sector. Not the same ships, but close enough to meet during leave rotations. The friendships formed at the academy would continue into service. As Danny and Bruno walked toward the transport docks, Commander Aldris intercepted them one last time. "A word, Lieutenant Reed," she said, using his new rank. "Yes, Commander. I have been asked to expand the Academy's training programs, to create new courses focused on interspecies cooperation and unconventional tactics. I would like permission to use your methods as teaching examples." "Of course, but Commander, they are not really my methods. Bruno and I just do what feels natural." "That is exactly why they work," Aldris said. "Rigid doctrine creates rigid thinking. Natural cooperation creates adaptability. The galaxy needs more adaptability right now." She looked at Bruno. "Take care of him." Bruno huffed softly. "And you," she said to Danny, "take care of him." "Always," Danny promised. They boarded their transport as the station's sun rose over the observation windows. Somewhere out in the frontier, new challenges waited. New friends to make, new bonds to form. The galaxy was vast and full of danger, but it was also full of possibility. Danny scratched behind Bruno's ears as the ship prepared for departure. The bear leaned against him, warm and solid and utterly trusted. They had come to the academy as outsiders. They left as officers. And somewhere along the way, they had taught an entire institution that family was not limited by species, that strength was not limited by convention, and that the best teams were built on love rather than hierarchy. The stars awaited,